A surprising arrival. In the flickering light of a distant star system, the interstellar haven for displaced youth drifted quietly. Within its reinforced walls, children from a myriad of alien races found temporary shelter, each dreaming of the day a new family might claim them. Yet for three particular sisters, that hope had gradually dwindled to a faint ember. Zyla, Nara, and Kira were Velans, a species known for their vibrant, color-shifting skin and empathic abilities. Orphaned when their homeworld fell victim to a cataclysmic celestial event, the girls were brought to the haven, their only remaining sanctuary in a vast, unforgiving galaxy. As time passed, would-be adopters came and went, each invariably shying away from the prospect of welcoming three traumatized sisters into their lives. The Velan girls were inseparable, their bond forged in shared sorrow and an unspoken oath to never leave one another behind. Even so, as months stretched into years, a creeping despair began to take root. Zyla, the eldest at 14 galactic standard years, remained fiercely protective of her younger siblings. Her skin, which once shimmered with hues of hopeful green and inquisitive purple, now more often flickered with shades of anxious orange and despondent blue. Nara, the middle child, retreated into the realms of imagination, her skin frequently awash in dreamy pinks and contemplative silvers. Kira, the youngest at just 8 years old, clung to her sisters like a lifeline, her colors mirroring their turbulent emotions. The girls had all but resigned themselves to a fate of permanent wardship when a most unexpected visitor arrived at the haven. Jasper Weston was a human, a rarity in this sector of the galaxy, and his reputation preceded him. A former soldier with a formidable record, he was known for his gruff demeanor and no-nonsense attitude. Rumor had it he single-handedly ended the Kirix rebellion and once fought off an entire battalion of Zorgan marauders armed with nothing but a plasma wrench and sheer determination. What could such a man possibly want at a place like the Haven? The staff buzzed with speculation as Jasper stalked the hallways, his steely gaze seeming to pierce through every door and bulkhead. When at last he stood before the chamber housing the Velan sisters, a palpable hush fell over the onlookers. Zyla stepped forward, shielding Nara and Kira behind her as the door slid open with a hiss. She met Jasper's eyes unflinchingly, her skin flickering with wary yellows and defiant reds. For a long moment, human and Velan studied each other in tense silence. Then, much to the shock of all assembled, Jasper uttered the words that would change the course of 5 lives forever. "I'll take them." At first, the girls were sure they'd misheard. Nara's skin rippled with confused grays while Kira's flushed an astonished white. Zyla could only blink in disbelief as the Haven's director, a matronly Zephyrian named Talira, pulled Jasper aside for a hushed conversation. "Mr. Weston, I must say this is quite unexpected," Talira began delicately. "Are you certain you wish to take on the responsibility of caring for 3 children? Especially ones with such a difficult history?" Jasper's expression remained inscrutable. "I know what I'm doing." "Yes, well," Talira pressed on, "it's just that we have limited information on your background and current circumstances. Normally, our screening process is quite extensive." "Look," Jasper cut in brusquely. "I've got a ship. I've got means. And I've got my reasons. That should be good enough." Talira's eyebrow ridges lifted in surprise at his gruff tone, but after a moment's consideration, she acquiesced. The Haven was perpetually short on resources, and the Velan girls had languished far too long without a prospect of placement. If this human was willing to take them on, who was she to stand in the way? And so, in a whirlwind of hastily signed documents and hurried farewells, Zyla, Nara, and Kira found themselves aboard Jasper Weston's starship, the Tempest, hurtling towards an unknown future. As the Haven receded in the viewports, Zyla couldn't suppress a shudder of apprehension. What did this strange, taciturn human want with them? Were they simply a means to an end, a convenient cover for some hidden agenda? Or could there be more to Jasper Weston than met the eye? As the Tempest jumped to hyperdrive, the Velan sisters huddled together in the sparse quarters Jasper had assigned them, their skin a kaleidoscope of clashing emotions. Trepidation and hope, fear and wonder, all swirled together in a dizzying tableau. One thing was certain, their lives would never be the same. The question was, would they find the family they'd always yearned for, or had they just exchanged one form of isolation for another? Only time would tell, as the tempest carried them deeper into the uncharted reaches of space, and the even more treacherous waters of the human heart. The first day aboard the Tempest passed in a surreal blur for the Velen sisters. After Jasper had shown them to their quarters, a small, Spartan room with 3 narrow bunks and a single porthole, he'd promptly disappeared into the bowels of the ship, leaving the girls to their own devices. Zyla took it upon herself to explore their new surroundings, her skin shimmering with cautious oranges and probing blues. The Tempest was an older model frigate, its corridors narrow and dimly lit. The hum of the engines provided a constant background drone, a tangible reminder of the vast emptiness beyond the hull. Nara, meanwhile, coaxed a hesitant Kira out of their quarters and into the ship's tiny galley. The room was little more than a nook with a few cabinets, a cooling unit, and a battered table bolted to the floor. Nara rummaged through the cabinets, her skin flickering with a determined green, until she found a canister of reconstituted protein cubes. "Here, Kira," she said softly, pressing a cube into her sister's hand. "You need to eat something." Kira nibbled at the cube listlessly, her colors a swirl of anxious yellows and somber grays. "I miss the haven," she whispered. "I miss our friends." Nara pulled her sister into a hug, her own skin bleeding into commiserating blues. "I know, sweetling. But we have to be brave, okay? We're all we've got now." Just then, Zyla burst into the galley, her colors a riot of agitated reds and urgent purples. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. Nara and Kira huddled closer as Zyla paced the cramped space. "I don't trust him," she declared, her skin flickering with suspicious magentas. "This whole thing feels wrong. Why would a human like Jasper Weston suddenly decide to adopt 3 alien orphans? It doesn't make sense." Nara's brow furrowed, her colors shifting to contemplative silvers. "Maybe he just wants to help us," she ventured. Zyla scoffed. "You've heard the stories about him. A man like that doesn't do anything without an angle. He wants something from us, I'm sure of it. But what could he possibly want?" Nara asked, her skin rippling with uneasy greens. "We don't have anything of value." "Maybe not," Zyla allowed. "But we do have our abilities." A heavy silence descended as the implications sunk in. Velens were known for their empathic powers, the ability to sense and sometimes even influence the emotions of those around them. It was an ability that could be exploited in countless ways by an unscrupulous individual. "You don't think?" Nara trailed off, her colors paling to a sickly white. "I don't know what to think," Zyla said grimly. "But we need to be on our guard. We can't let him use us." Kira clutched at Nara's arm, her skin awash in frightened pinks and seeking comfort. "I'm scared," she whimpered. Zyla crouched down, her colors softening to reassuring shades of blue and violet. "It's all right, little star. I won't let anything happen to you, to either of you. We stick together, no matter what. Promise?" "Promise," Nara and Kira echoed, their skin synchronizing with Zyla's determined hues. Just then, the ship shuddered around them and the telltale hum of the engines changed pitch. They felt the distinctive lurch of dropping out of hyperdrive, they had arrived somewhere. Casting a significant look at her sisters, Zyla led the way out of the galley and towards the cockpit. It was time to confront their enigmatic benefactor and demand some answers. Yet as they approached the cockpit, the girls were brought up short by the sound of raised voices. One was unmistakably Jasper's, his gruff baritone edged with something that sounded almost like desperation. "Told you, I don't have it. The deal's off, you hear me? Off." The other voice, distorted by the crackle of a comm link, responded in a sibilant hiss that sent chills down the girls' spines. You dare defy me, human? Need I remind you what's at stake? Bring me what I seek, or suffer the consequences. You have one solar cycle. Do not disappoint me again. There was a burst of static, then silence. The girls exchanged wide-eyed looks, their skin a mottled canvas of shocked whites and fearful grays. What had they just overheard? What deal was Jasper involved in? And more chillingly, what would the consequences be if he failed to deliver? Xyla's earlier misgivings resurged with a vengeance, her colors darkening to match her growing sense of dread. Had they truly escaped one peril only to land squarely in the middle of another? As Jasper's heavy footsteps approached the cockpit door, the Velen sisters braced themselves for a confrontation. The truth, it seemed, was even more complicated and dangerous than they could have imagined. An unlikely connection. The cockpit door hissed open, revealing a visibly agitated Jasper. His rugged features were drawn into a scowl, his eyes darkened by some inner turmoil. He pulled up short at the sight of the Velen sisters huddled in the corridor, their skin awash in anxious hues. For a tense moment, Human and Velens stared at each other, a gulf of unspoken questions yawning between them. Then Xyla stepped forward, her colors cycling through determined reds and challenging oranges. What's going on? She demanded. Who were you talking to? Jasper's jaw clenched. That's none of your concern, he growled. Xyla's skin flared with indignant crimsons. None of our concern? We're on this ship with you, in the middle of nowhere. If there's trouble, we have a right to know. Nara laid a restraining hand on her sister's arm, her own colors shading to soothing blues. Please, Mr. Weston, she said softly. We just want to understand. We heard you arguing with someone. Are we in danger? For a long moment, Jasper simply stared at them, his expression unreadable. Then, to their surprise, his shoulders sagged and he ran a weary hand over his face. Look, he said gruffly. You don't need to worry about any of that. It's my problem, not yours. I'll handle it. But Xyla wasn't ready to let it go. Handle what, exactly? What have you gotten us into? Jasper's eyes flashed. I said I'll handle it, he snapped. Now drop it and get back to your quarters. We'll be making a supply stop soon, and I don't need you underfoot. With that, he shouldered past them and stalked off down the corridor, leaving the girls more confused and frightened than ever. As the Tempest docked at a seedy-looking space station a few hours later, Jasper left the ship without a word, locking the girls inside with strict instructions not to open the hatch for anyone. Huddled in their quarters, the sisters tried to make sense of their situation. Xyla paced the small room like a caged animal, her skin stormy with agitated grays. I knew it, she muttered. I knew there was something off about him. We've got to find out what he's up to. Nara, ever the voice of reason, tried to calm her sister. Xyla, we can't just go snooping around. What if we get caught? Besides, maybe it's not as bad as we think. Maybe he really is trying to protect us. Xyla rounded on her, incredulous mauves and disbelieving greens rippling across her skin. Protect us? By locking us up and keeping secrets? No, Nara. There's something else going on here, and we need to find out what it is. For our own safety. Kira, who had been listening silently from her bunk, suddenly sat up, her skin pulsing with excited pinks. I know, she exclaimed. I can use my powers to find out. Both older sisters turned to stare at her. What do you mean, Kira? Nara asked gently. I've been practicing, Kira explained, her colors blooming with pride. I can project my consciousness now, like astral projection. I could try to find Jasper and see what he's doing. Xyla's skin flared with alarmed oranges. No way, Kira. It's too dangerous. You've never tried it over a distance before. But Kira was already settling back on her bunk, her skin fading to a determined white. "I can do it," she insisted. "I want to help." Before Zyla could argue further, Kira's eyes drifted shut and her body went slack. Zyla and Nara exchanged worried glances, their skin mirroring shades of anxious green, but there was nothing to do now but wait. On the space station, Jasper moved through the crowds with single-minded purpose, his hand never far from the blaster at his hip. He hated this place, with its press of unwashed bodies and air that reeked of desperation. But he had no choice, his contact was here, and time was running out. He finally reached the dingy bar where the meeting was set to take place. Sliding into a booth at the back, he scanned the room warily. His contact was late, which was never a good sign. Suddenly, a hooded figure slipped into the seat across from him. Jasper tensed, his hand tightening on his blaster, but the figure raised a placating hand. "Easy, Weston," a feminine voice purred. "Is that any way to greet an old friend?" The figure pushed back her hood, revealing a striking Zephyrian woman with calculating eyes. Jasper's lip curled. "Reza," he bit out. "I should have known. Only you would be brazen enough to double-cross the syndicate." Reza leaned back, a smug smile playing about her lips. "And only you would be foolish enough to try and back out of a deal with Zane." "Really, Jasper, what were you thinking?" "I was thinking I'm done being that snake's errand boy," Jasper growled. "The job's off, Reza. I'm out." Reza's smile faded, replaced by a look of cold appraisal. "You know it's not that simple. Zane doesn't take kindly to broken contracts. He'll hunt you to the ends of the galaxy." Jasper's face was grim. "Let him try." Reza studied him for a long moment, then leaned forward, her voice lowered conspiratorially. "There might be another way," she murmured. "A way to get Zane off your back for good. But it would require something special." Jasper's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" Reza's smile was a knife's edge. "Rumor has it you've recently come into possession of some rather unique cargo. 3 Velen girls, to be precise." Jasper stiffened, his face darkening with fury. "No. Absolutely not. Leave them out of this, Reza." But Reza pressed on, undeterred. "Zane would pay handsomely for such a prize. Velen empaths are rare and valuable. With their abilities, he could expand his empire tenfold." "I said no." Jasper snarled, slamming his fist on the table. "I'm not handing those girls over to that monster." Reza sat back, her expression calculating. "Why, Jasper," she purred. "Don't tell me you've actually grown attached to your little strays." "How touching." Jasper glared at her, his jaw clenched. "This conversation is over. I'll find another way to deal with Zane." He stood abruptly, tossing a few credits on the table. "Don't contact me again, Reza. I mean it." With that, he turned and stalked out of the bar, leaving a thoughtful Reza staring after him. Light years away, on the Tempest, Kira's eyes snapped open with a gasp. Her skin was a riot of clashing emotions, shock, confusion, and a dawning understanding. "Zyla! Nara," she cried. "I know what's going on. I know why Jasper adopted us." Her sisters crowded around her, their own skin shimmering with urgent curiosity. "What is it, Kira?" Nara asked breathlessly. "What did you see?" As Kira poured out her tale in a rush of words and flashing colors, Zyla and Nara listened in growing astonishment and dismay. Jasper, it seemed, was not the villain they had feared, but neither was he the savior they had hoped for. He was a man caught in a dangerous game, one that threatened to consume them all. And at the heart of it all was a chilling truth: the Velen sisters were not merely adoptees. They were bargaining chips in a deadly struggle between a desperate man and an intergalactic crime lord. The revelation left them reeling, their colors a swirling maelstrom of shock and betrayal. Yet even in the midst of their turmoil, a small, stubborn part of each sister couldn't help but wonder. If Jasper truly meant to trade them away, why had he refused Ray's offer? Could it be that, beneath his gruff exterior, there was a glimmer of genuine concern for their well-being? A flicker of the family they'd dared to dream of? As the tempest hummed around them, carrying them deeper into the unknown, the Velen sisters huddled together, their skin cycling through shades of determination. They had a mystery to unravel and a decision to make. Would they confront Jasper and demand the truth? Would they try to run, to find their own way in a galaxy that had never been kind to orphans? Or would they stay and fight for the chance, however slim, of a future they'd never thought possible, a future with a place to call home, and someone to call family? The answers seemed as distant as the stars outside their porthole. But one thing was certain, they would face whatever came together. Always together. With a resolute nod, Zyla turned to her sisters, her skin settling into a steady, purposeful blue. "Okay," she said. "Here's what we're going to do. Secrets and shadows." Jasper stormed back onto the tempest, his mind awhirl with conflicting emotions. Ray's offer echoed in his head, taunting him with its cruel simplicity. Trade the girls, save himself. It would be so easy. Except it wouldn't. Because somehow, in the short time he'd known them, Zyla, Nara, and Kira had wormed their way past his defenses. They weren't just cargo to him anymore. They were, what? Charges? Wards? He shook his head angrily. It didn't matter. What mattered was keeping them safe, even if that meant facing down the wrath of the most notorious crime lord in the sector. As he strode into the common room, he found the girls waiting for him, their expressions solemn and their skin a united front of determined blue. He pulled up short, suddenly wary. "What's going on?" he asked gruffly. Zyla stepped forward, her gaze unflinching. "We know about Zane," she said without preamble. "And we know about the deal you made." Jasper felt the blood drain from his face. "How?" "I projected to the station," Kira piped up, her skin flashing with apologetic pinks. "I saw you with that Zephyrian woman. I heard everything." Jasper closed his eyes briefly, a wave of weariness washing over him. Then he straightened, his expression hardening. "You shouldn't have done that," he said sternly. "It was too risky." Zyla's skin flared with challenging oranges. "Riskier than being kept in the dark while our lives are bargained over," she shot back. Jasper flinched, but held his ground. "I told you, I'll handle it. You don't need to worry." "But we are worried." Nara burst out, her colors churning with distress. "How can we not be? We're in danger, and it's because of us." "No," Jasper said sharply. "It's because of me. I'm the one who got involved with Zane, long before I ever met you. This is my mess." "But why did you adopt us?" Kira asked, her voice small. Was it just to trade us to Zane?" Jasper's heart clenched at the fear and betrayal in her tone. He knelt down, bringing himself to her eye level. "No, Kira," he said firmly. "That was never my intention. I took you in because..." He trailed off, struggling for words. Why had he done it? He'd asked himself that question 1,000 times since leaving the Haven. Was it guilt, for the lives he'd taken in the name of profit? Was it a desire for redemption, a chance to do one good thing in a life steeped in blood and darkness? Or was it something more, something he barely dared to acknowledge even to himself, a yearning for connection, for family, for a reason to be something more than just a hired gun? He looked at the girls, at their wide, trusting eyes and their skin that reflected every flicker of his own turbulent emotions. And suddenly, he knew. "I took you in because I saw something in you," he said quietly. "A strength, a resilience, that reminded me of myself, I guess. Of who I used to be, before everything. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to meet their gazes. I won't lie to you. I've done things I'm not proud of. Things that have put me on the wrong side of some very dangerous people. But I swear to you, on everything I have left, that I will not let any harm come to you. Not from Zane, not from anyone. I'll die first. There was a long, charged silence. Then Zyla stepped forward, her skin rippling with complex hues, doubt, fear, hope, and something that might have been the first stirrings of trust. Okay, she said softly. We believe you. But Jasper, you don't have to do this alone. We're in this together now, whether you like it or not. Jasper stared at her, a lump rising in his throat. Together, he echoed roughly. Nara and Kira moved to flank their sister, their skin settling into a unified pattern of resolved purples and determined greens. So what's the plan? Nara asked, her voice steady. How do we take down an intergalactic crime lord? Jasper felt a grin tug at his lips, the first real smile in longer than he could remember. Well, he drawled, it just so happens I have a few ideas about that. As the tempest hummed to life around them, preparing for the next jump, the unlikely crew gathered around the table, heads bent together in conspiratorial planning. There would be dangers ahead, that much was certain. Zane's reach was vast, and his vengeance would be terrible. But for the first time in years, Jasper felt a flicker of something he'd thought long extinguished, hope. Hope for a future beyond mere survival, hope for a life that held more than just the next job, the next fight. Hope for a family, cobbled together from the broken pieces of their pasts, but no less precious for it. He looked at the girls, at their fierce determination and their unwavering loyalty, and felt his resolve harden into an unbreakable core. Let Zane come. Let the whole damn galaxy try to stand in their way. They would face it together, as a family. And may the stars have mercy on anyone who tried to tear them apart. As the tempest leapt into hyperspace, carrying them towards an uncertain future, Jasper allowed himself a moment to savor the unfamiliar feeling of belonging, of purpose. For so long, he'd wandered the stars alone, his only companion the bitter tang of regret and the cold comfort of a blaster at his side. But now, with Zyla's steady presence at his back, Nara's quick mind working in tandem with his own, and Kira's boundless empathy reminding him of the man he once was, he felt a sense of completeness he'd never known he was missing. The road ahead would be hard, and the shadows of his past still lurked at the edges of his mind. But for the first time in a long, long time, Jasper Weston looked to the future with something like genuine anticipation. After all, he thought wryly as Kira's laughter echoed through the ship, startling a rusty chuckle from his own throat, it couldn't be any harder than raising 3 alien teenagers. And who knew? Maybe, just maybe, they would find a way to save not just each other, but themselves along the way. It was a slender hope, a fragile dream. But it was theirs, and they would fight for it. Together. Trials and transformations. The plan was simple in theory, but daunting in execution. To get Zane off their backs for good, they needed leverage, something to hold over the crime lord's head, a bargaining chip to ensure their safety. And as it turned out, Jasper had just the thing. Or rather, he knew where to find it. It's called the Zephyr Codex, he explained to the girls as they huddled around the star map. It's a data cache containing information on all of Zane's operations, his smuggling routes, his blackmail material, his bribed officials. With that in our hands, we could bring his entire empire crashing down. Zyla's skin shimmered with impressed greens. Okay, that's, wow. How do you know about this? Jasper's face darkened. Because I'm the one who stole it for him in the first place. A heavy silence fell over the group. Then Nara spoke up, her voice tentative. So, where is it now? Jasper sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. That's the problem. I hid it, years ago. Couldn't bring myself to hand it over to Zane. But the hiding place is, well, it's not exactly easy to get to. He tapped a few commands into the console, zooming the map in on a small, nondescript planet. Vortex Station, he said grimly. The most secure black market data vault in the quadrant. It's where all the big players keep their dirty little secrets. Kira's eyes widened, her skin paling to a nervous white. And that's where we're going, she squeaked. Jasper nodded. It's the only way. We need that codex. Zyla leaned forward, her expression determined. Then let's do it. We've come this far. We're not backing down now. And so, with a course set and a purpose clear, the Tempest and her crew hurtled towards their destiny. But destiny, as it turned out, had a few curveballs in store. The first came in the form of an unexpected visitor. As the Tempest docked at a remote outpost for supplies, a familiar figure sauntered up the loading ramp, Reza, the Zephyrian from the space station. Jasper had his blaster trained on her before she could take 2 steps. Give me one good reason not to shoot, he growled. Reza held up her hands, a smirk playing about her lips. Now, is that any way to greet a lady? You're no lady, Jasper snarled. You're a backstabbing snake. What do you want? Reza's smirk faded, replaced by a look of uncharacteristic solemnity. I want to help you, she said simply. Jasper barked a laugh. Right. And I've got a moon to sell you. But Reza pressed on, undeterred. I'm serious, Jasper. I know about the codex. And I know you're planning to hit Vortex Station. You'll never make it alone. Jasper's eyes narrowed. And you're offering, what? Your services? Reza spread her hands. Think of it as a peace offering. A chance to make amends for past misdeeds. Jasper stared at her for a long, tense moment. Then, slowly, he lowered his blaster. Fine, he bit out. But one wrong move, and you'll be breathing vacuum. Clear. Reza's smile was all teeth. Crystal. The second curveball came in the form of the girls themselves. As they drew closer to Vortex Station, their powers began to manifest in new and startling ways. Zyla found she could project not just emotions, but physical sensations, a touch, a breeze, the warmth of a sun. Nara discovered she could read the history of an object, gleaning insights into its past and its purpose. And Kira, sweet little Kira, learned to not just sense emotions, but to influence them, to soothe or incite with a mere thought. Jasper watched their growth with a mixture of pride and trepidation. Their powers were a double-edged sword, a potent tool, but also a glaring liability. If Zane ever found out the true extent of their abilities. He shook off the thought, refocusing on the task at hand. They were approaching Vortex Station, and he needed every ounce of his wits about him. The plan was straightforward but risky. Reza, with her underworld connections, would get them inside. From there, Jasper and Zyla would make their way to the vault while Nara and Kira provided a psychic smokescreen, masking their presence from the station's security. It was a gamble, staking everything on a single, desperate play. But it was the only move they had. As the Tempest docked and the crew prepared to disembark, Jasper pulled the girls aside for a final word. Listen, he said gruffly, his eyes suspiciously bright. I know I haven't been the best guardian. Or friend. Or whatever. But I want you to know. He trailed off, swallowing hard. Zyla laid a hand on his arm, her skin warm with understanding. We know, Jasper, she said softly. We know. And with that, they set off into the bowels of the station, their fates intertwined and their hearts as one. The heist itself was a thing of beauty, a ballet of split-second timing, daring improvisation, and raw, unflinching courage. Reza proved her worth, leading them through a dizzying labyrinth of secret passages and hidden doors. Zyla was a force of nature, her projected illusions sending guards scrambling and alarms blaring uselessly. Nara's insights guided them unerringly to their goal, while Kira's soothing influence kept panic and suspicion at bay. And Jasper? Jasper was a man possessed, his every move driven by a fierce, unshakable determination. This was his chance, his one shot at redemption. And he would not let it slip through his fingers. It was there, in the heart of the vault, that they found it, a small, unassuming data chip, the key to their salvation. Jasper held it aloft, his face split by a grin of triumph. And then all hell broke loose. Alarms shrieked, blast doors slammed shut, and the thud of booted feet filled the corridors. They were trapped, cornered like rats in a maze. But Jasper Weston had not come this far to fail now. With a roar of defiance, he led his charges into the fray, blasters blazing and spirits undaunted. It was a battle for the ages, a desperate, clawing struggle against overwhelming odds. But driven by the bond that had grown between them, the unbreakable ties of love and loyalty, they fought on. And in the end, bloodied, battered, but unbroken, they emerged victorious. The journey back to the Tempest was a blur of adrenaline and elation. They had done it. Against all odds, they had seized their destiny and made it their own. But even as they collapsed onto the ship, exhausted but exultant, Jasper knew their trials were far from over. They had the Codex, yes. But using it, leveraging it against a foe as formidable as Zane, would be another matter entirely. As he looked around at his crew, at the fierce, proud faces of the girls he had come to think of as his own, he felt a swell of emotion clog his throat. They had started this journey as strangers, bound only by circumstance and necessity. But now, forged in the crucible of adversity, they were something more. Something unbreakable. The silence aboard the Tempest was thick with anticipation. Jasper hunched over the data chip, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface, parsing through the Zephyr Codex's labyrinthine contents. Each encrypted file was a potential weapon, a secret that could bring Zane's criminal empire crashing down. Reza lounged against the bulkhead, her sharp eyes never leaving Jasper's hands. "You're taking your time," she observed, a hint of impatience threading her voice. "Precision matters," Jasper muttered. "One wrong move and we tip our hand." Zyla moved closer, her skin shifting through a spectrum of blues and grays that spoke of her inner tension. "What are we looking for exactly?" Jasper's lips pressed into a thin line. "Leverage. Something so damaging that Zane will have no choice but to back off. Permanently." Nara, seated nearby, suddenly went rigid. Her hand reached out, brushing against a nearby data pad. "Wait," she whispered, her eyes glazing over. The object's history unfolded before her inner sight, fragments of conversations, encrypted transmissions, hidden connections. "There," she said, her voice gaining strength. "There's a network. Not just smuggling routes, but political connections. Zane's been playing a much larger game." Kira leaned in, her empathic abilities sensing the weight of the revelation. The emotional landscape around them grew tense, charged with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Reza straightened, all pretense of casual indifference dropping. "Political leverage. That's the kind of information that can destroy more than just a criminal enterprise." Jasper's fingers flew across the interface, pulling up holographic maps and connection diagrams. A web of corruption began to take shape, government officials, military commanders, corporate executives, all threaded together by Zane's manipulative tendrils. "This goes deep," he muttered. "Deeper than I ever imagined." But even as the triumph of their successful heist began to crystallize, a warning klaxon suddenly blared. The ship's defensive systems lit up, tracking an incoming signal. Zyla's skin erupted in a sharp crimson of alarm. "We've been found." Jasper's hand instinctively reached for his blaster. "Not just found. Tracked." The girls moved into formation, Nara scanning potential outcomes, Kira preparing to manipulate emotional responses, Zyla ready to project defensive illusions. Reza drew her own weapon, a predatory smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Looks like our little victory celebration might be cut short," she said. Jasper's laugh was more a bark of defiance. "Not likely. We didn't come this far to be stopped now." As the Tempest's engines roared to life and evasive maneuvers began, one thing became crystal clear: their fight against Zane was far from over. It was, in many ways, just beginning. And they would face it together, a family forged not by blood, but by choice, by survival, by an unbreakable bond that no enemy could shatter.